Their arrogance blinds them. Their concern for their friends is theirs. Good. Good. Now do what you must. February 15th, 1941. This week, Rommel arrives in North Africa. What more can I say? I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, the Allies raced armored units across the North African desert to outflank and defeat the Italians. In East Africa at Keren, however, they are stalled. There was a lot of action at sea, and the Japanese offensive in Henan province ended in failure. Here's what follows. On the 9th, Italian leader Benito Mussolini gets word that German reinforcements are en route to North Africa. See, last week's huge Italian loss at Baie de Fom and the destruction of the Italian 10th Army looked like it was opening the door for British control of Libya, and only a large German force could keep the British from doing to the Italians in North Africa what the Greeks were evidently too exhausted to do to them in Albania. The British advance reaches El Agheila the 9th and comes to a halt there. There isn't any real enemy opposition to it continuing, but there's a new wrinkle. On the 10th, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill formally tells Archie Wavell, commander of the whole theater of battle, that military help for Greece is a priority over exploiting things in North Africa, specifically mentioning the important effect on American public opinion of fulfilling promises to smaller nations. He also wants to make a good impression on Turkey. On the 11th, the Director of Military Intelligence gives the Defense Committee in London the news that German divisions currently in Romania and the 12 more soon arriving pretty much guarantee that Germany is going to secure Greece by war rather than diplomacy. So Wavell's orders are set in stone. Defending an ally takes precedence now over defeating a foe, especially if that ally's defeat brings the enemy closer to Egypt, Palestine, and the Suez Canal. That same day, elements of the German Afrika Korps begin to arrive in Tripoli, the 5th Light Division. The 15th Panzer Division is also on its way. The 12th Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, one of the big stars of the Battle of France last year, arrives in North Africa. He will lead them. The occupation of El Agheila marks the end of the advances that are Operation Compass. Any threat to Egypt and Suez from the Italians now seems non-existent. So on the 16th, tomorrow, the British government will decide to occupy and hold Cyrenaica with as small a force as possible so all other forces can help Greece. They are aware that German troops have begun to arrive in Tripoli, sure, but they don't think that they'll be in any position to attack until at least May. And by then, any losses the Desert Army has taken will have been made up by the 2 new divisions that will have arrived from Britain along with aircraft. Wavell orders his forces to just make ready to stop any future attack out of Tripoli at El Agheila. I should point out that Richard O'Connor, field commander, is very much against this plan. He wants to invade Tripolitania and take Tripoli. For him, that is security. I mean, the enemy can't make any move against Egypt until they've landed a large armed force in Africa, right? And if they literally have nowhere to land it, then Egypt's safety is guaranteed. The odds of any kind of major amphibious attack are slim to none, and having airfields in Tripolitania would allow the RAF to hit Sicily and even Italy itself, and it would sure be easier to secure Malta, which is under constant bombardment. There are even possible intangibles, like making nice with the French in Tunisia and Algeria. That could help in the future, right? Maybe. O'Connor cannot see any downside to taking Tripoli. He wants to use both the 7th and 2nd Armored Divisions to advance, while a brigade lands by sea near Tripoli itself. David Braddock talks about this in Britain's Desert War in Egypt. And he also goes into the downsides, right? Sure, there won't likely be much resistance en route there, but Tripoli itself is big and will be well defended. And there are a lot of problems in the Mediterranean. The Royal Navy is already running at full capacity, maintaining communications and supplies from Egypt to Benghazi. And the Luftwaffe is in Sicily, and they're beefing up. They've already been attacking shipping. They have the numbers over the RAF. And it's going to be really hard to increase the Royal Navy's operational tasks in light of that. and attacking Tripoli itself will unavoidably make serious demands on the forces required to oppose a German invasion of Greece. Period. And even without the need to send help to the Greeks, the logistical problems of an advance to Tripoli are so great that it is questionable if it was ever a practicable proposition at this stage of the war. O'Connor had very few serviceable tanks left after Beta Foam, and his transport echelons were in a shocking state after the exertions of the 2 previous months. If the lack of shipping and the certainty of enemy air superiority are also considered, it seems probable that the capture of Tripoli, however desirable, was, even in February 1941, a hope for the future. And so a Tripoli adventure is postponed. And as Rommel and the German units begin to arrive, British High Command is reorganized. O'Connor is sent to Egypt to become General Officer in Command of Troops. Henry Wilson, whose job that was, becomes Military Governor of Cyrenaica, and Thomas Blarney and the headquarters of the 1st Australian Corps replaces O'Connor and 13th Corps headquarters. But just peering into my crystal ball, and in case I forget to mention it later, Wilson, Blarney, and the Australian Corps headquarters will soon enough be sent to Greece, and Philip Neame will come in from Palestine to take over Cyrenaica command. That is, by the way, a civil post and not a genuine Corps headquarters. As for the forces that will remain and not head for Greece, only the 9th Australian and half the 2nd Armored Division are available in Cyrenaica and Egypt as February rolls on. The 7th Armored Division, which had done so much the past 2 months, is being refitted. That's still not as good as it sounds even, for 2 of the best brigades of the 9th are sent to Greece and are replaced by ones with no battle experience. The 2nd Armored is made up of an armored brigade and an incomplete support group, only around 200 tanks total, and mechanically they are in a dire state. This dismal picture was completed by the fact that divisional staffs were also undertrained, understrength, and lacking in battle experience. So that's what's left for the land defense of Britain's North African possessions as the advance ends. But what of the British advances in East Africa? The Battle of Keren, for the last Italian stronghold in Eritrea, continues. The British and Indian troops attack the mountains several times, but to no avail. They soon realized the severity of the situation. There was no way round. The escarpment must be pierced frontally. All the strength of the British Army in Sudan must concentrate upon it. It would take about 4 weeks of dull and steady work to bring the necessary supplies and material forward for the grand offensive. The advance from Kenya into Italian Somaliland continues though this week. On the 11th, the King's African Rifles take Afmadu. The 13th, the Gold Coast Brigade takes Bulo Erilo. The 14th, the South Africans take Gobwen, and Lower Jubaland is now held by Commonwealth forces. On the 14th, the 22nd East African Brigade of the King's African Rifles takes Kismayu. The advance in general is rapid, but all of this has also symbolic significance. Mussolini had lost the most valuable portions of the territory that had been ceded to Italy as part payment for her services during the Great War. The British are doing a lot this week, all over. On the 10th comes the first ever British paratroop action. They attack the aqueduct that serves Taranto. They do put it out of action, but all 38 of them are captured, escaping to a submarine, and the aqueduct is working again within days. This is Operation Colossus. A day earlier comes an audacious attack. The battleship Malaya and battlecruiser Renown bombard the harbor at Genoa. The carrier Ark Royal takes part, sending planes against Leghorn and La Spezia. 5 ships at Genoa are sunk and 18 more damaged. On the 13th, the carrier Formidable attacks Massawa. Now, it is supposed to go to the Mediterranean, but it cannot pass through the Suez Canal, where German planes have been dropping mines. They need to be cleared first. Actually, the Germans have a success at sea this week on the 9th, using air, surface, and undersea units. Submarine U-37 sights shipping convoy HG-53 and calls in the heavy cruiser Admiral Hippe and bomber support. FW-200 Condors arrive and sink 5 ships. Hippe hits the convoy again the 11th and sinks another ship. On the 12th, he hits convoy SLS-64. Now this is unescorted and loses 9 ships sunk or heavily damaged. And the week comes to an end, and with it Operation Compass, though the Allied troops are still slugging it out in East Africa on 2 fronts. The bombing of Malta continues unabated. And a successful German military leader, known for his daring and creativity, arrives in North Africa. Well, the situation there is anything but good for the Axis at the moment, even with the British forces stripped bare. So he's really got his work cut out for him. But that does not seem to bother him though. For a couple of days from now, on the 17th, Erwin Rommel writes to his wife Lucia, Lou, "Everything's splendid with me and mine in this glorious sunshine. I'm getting on very, very well with the Italian command and could not wish for better cooperation." Now, Rommel was not a member of the Nazi Party, though by all indications he did welcome Hitler's rise to power. If you'd like to see our Between Two Wars episode about Hitler's consolidation of power, click here for that any second now. Our TimeGhost Army member of the week is Zachary Bear. Join the Army by supporting us at patreon.com or timeghost.tv. It is you who finances this show, and yes, every dollar does count. Do not forget to subscribe and ring that bell. I'll see you next time.